First day of our 3-year plan hearings. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Te tawa mai i runga, te tawa mai raro, te tawa mai roto, te tawa mai waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, pai ki e. We have no apologies. Are there any conflicts of interest? Councillor Taylor.
Board walks today and the Community Fitness Trust this morning.
Thank you. Any further conflicts of interest? There's no announcements by myself. Any announcements by management?
None.
Thank you. Just to advise that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed via Council's Facebook page. Speakers today will have 10 minutes to present and respond to questions from elected members. There will be a soft bell at 4 minutes and a hard bell at 5 minutes, indicating the end of the time for the submitters to present. And then questions will be asked for from elected members, and again with a soft bell at 9 minutes and a hard bell at 10. And we do have a number of submitters to get through, so we will be working to those timeframes. We also need to look at Standing Order 4.2. A meeting cannot continue more than 6 hours from when it starts, including adjournments. This meeting will be going for longer than that 6-hour timeframe. So pursuant to Standing Order 4.2, an extension of time until 7:30 p.m. on the 27th of May 2024 is to be granted. So we will now get straight into our submitters. So welcome, Liz, you're first up today. Lovely to have you here. And I would invite you to present your submission to us.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Thank you for this opportunity to meet. I thought I had 10 minutes to talk, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. So my name is Liz. I've lived in Napier for 22 years, and I hope to live here and work here for many more and into retirement. I'm a renter, and next year I'll be 65. I'm speaking to my submission with a focus on housing, and the reason it's important to me is that this year I was within a few weeks of being homeless. Even though I had searched for 9 months with the support registered with MSD and Kāinga Ora, there was no accessible housing for me, and MSD referred me to the Napier City Council. And your great staff really wanted to help, but there was actually nothing that there was available for me. My submission is actually in support of a focus on retirement housing, and that's not because I don't think social housing is hugely important and desperately needed, but it's because it's really clear that you can't do both well. So my concern is that even though you are going to focus perhaps on just retirement housing, that there will be even less accessible housing once that housing, the social housing stock, is moved on and no longer. And you might think this might not matter because, you know, older people, disabled people, they're often thought to be separate things. But 1.1 million New Zealanders are disabled, and 35% of those are over 65. And disabled people are more likely to have lower incomes and therefore more likely to be renters and need housing support. So we often don't recognise older people as part of the disability community. There's an assumption about what disabled people look like. And we all know people that, make do, they're stoic, they don't want to be a bother, and they don't accept, help because there's a lot to accept with your changing abilities. But the reason I can speak with confidence about how it feels for an older person who's struggling with accessibility is that because before I was in a wheelchair, I was using a walker, and before that a stick, and then for many years before that I was struggling with invisible impairment where people couldn't see that I needed support, but I really struggled in standardised housing. And it was at best exhausting and at worst really dangerous. And the only difference between my needs now and needs then is that now I can't pretend and I can't make do. But what older people need and what I need are actually the same things. So things like, flat ramped entries, not just for wheelchairs, it's for when you've got balance issues, strength issues. We all juggle things going in and out of the house, wider doorways for walkers with grocery bags. There's a lot of other examples. But we make do because maybe we don't know what we don't know, but mostly because we don't have a choice. And there was a real lack of knowledge around accessibility when our older housing stock was built, but we know better now, and there is a better way. And I think that every citizen has the right to be safe and comfortable in their council houses because that's their home. And it is possibly the last years that they will live in the community that they love. So what I'm asking the council for is to educate yourself on universal design and making homes fit for purpose, and to keep it in mind every time you do maintenance on your council homes, when you improve and refurbish, to make good choices, if and when you rebuild, to have universal design very front of mind in planning and pre-planning. Don't leave it till later, but when it's because refits cost a lot of money and there's a lot of excuses about why you can't go back and do it the right way. So that's what I'm asking for. I'd like the council to build on the great work that they've done, with accessibility around the CBD. That's what we show out of face to everyone and to the tourists and international visitors that we have. But what we need is to bring those principles into our homes as well and do the right thing behind closed doors too. So I know that bureaucracy moves slowly, and I hope that in 5 to 10 years, if someone else with access needs approaches the Napier City Council, that there will be a safe and comfortable home for them in their final years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. I'll open up for any questions from elected members. I think a very, clear submission, thank you, and we do definitely acknowledge the need for accessible housing in our city, and that will certainly form part of our considerations in terms of the future of our own housing portfolio, in terms of what we currently have and how we can move forward to ensure that there is still, we're meeting that need. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz, for taking the time and coming to talk to us today. I would now invite Mr. Mervyn Kite to present your submission, please. Welcome.
Thank you. I likewise understood I'd have 10 minutes, but I'll try and keep it shorter.
If you go a little bit beyond the 5, that's okay.
It'll be about 8 minutes. But
okay, and then I'll just make sure that we won't have too many questions from elected members, which you might like that.
I'm Mervyn Kite and lived at the Eskill subdivision close to Bayview, and my submission today pertain about the stormwater rate that's being planned to be introduced. I'm aware that there's a possibility that it may not now be the case. However, I think it's really relevant for you, the councillors, and in turn your staff, to be aware of the situation going forward, as undoubtedly a rural residential targeted stormwater rate will appear at some stage in future years. Our main concern is the failure of the Napier City Council to understand the efficiency of the 5 detention dams that we own and operate at Eskills, and the possible subsequent application of an incorrect stormwater rate in future years. We have been faced with an intolerable increase in rates which incorporate the stormwater rate, and it's a major factor, and we're our rate will increase from our general rate and stormwater rate without the targeted rates will increase from 2,843 next year, or from July the 1st, to 6,338, an increase of 223%. So that's from 2,800 to 6,300. And a component of that is your targeted standalone stormwater rate. All residents of Esk Hills contribute to the maintenance of 5 detention dams sited on or close to the boundaries of the Esk Hills reserves. These dams detain the high volume stormwater flows and release it through small diameter pipes. These dams are reasonably big. We have 5 of them, 20 to 30 metres long, and 2 are over 7 metres high. So they are reasonably big dams, and they have a significant holding capacity. Each dam has a discharge pipe of 300 mils, so that's the maximum water that can come out of them. And I've seen a number of the dams full, and one dam took 3 days to empty, so that's how much water it's held back. 3 of these dams are above State Highway 2 and the Esk Valley Winery. They have a sizable catchment of about 100 hectares, which is the bulk of the Haipipi Pa, Esk Hills, the winery, and part of Kaimata. And give you an idea as to that area, that's the equivalent of the Onikawa industrial area, Previson Drive, Expressway, Taradale Road. So that's how big the area is. The stormwater discharge from our 100 hectares is detained by these dams and discharged through 3 pipes that big. So 100 hectares of stormwater coming through 3 pipes that big. And the largest detention dam discharges down under State Highway 2 and into a roadside drain about that wide and about that deep. And that gives you an indication as to how effective these detention dams are in removing stormwater flows and then slowly discharging the water. During Gabriel, there's no scouring or damage immediately downstream from the dams. Without these dams, the stormwater or surface runoff would immediately flow into the Bayview drainage system, and this system would be incapable of handling the stormwater volumes. The dams are essential and integral component to the Bayview water system or stormwater control. And interestingly, they are of no benefit to us at Esk Hills. They are at our boundary, but we maintain them at our cost, but they're of no benefit to us. As justification for applying capital value to the stormwater rates, Napier City Council state in their long-term plan that there is a strong relationship between capital value and the hard surface area of the property. In other words, stormwater runoff. This may be correct in an urban area, but it's manifestly wrong in a rural residential area. It's a statement and concept that we strongly contest, and I've probably got stronger words, but I won't mention them. And in September 2002, when a resource consent was applied for the development of Esk Hills, the section 2.1 provision for stormwater runoff states, the engineering feasibility report states that the proposed development, houses plus hard stand, will have a very minor increase in the impermeable surfaces over the whole of Esk Hills of approximately 2%. With such a small change in the characteristics of the catchment and location of the houses on the ridge lines, it is expected that there will be no measurable increase in the downstream flows of stormwater from our area. Transit New Zealand consultants report that the increase in stormwater from the proposed development is likely to be negligible and unlikely to result in any adverse effects on the state highway. So these comments or terms, very minor and negligible, referring to the flows, are referenced against the original rural or pastoral land on which the stormwater rate is 0. In actual fact, the stormwater loading is considerably less than rural land due to the operation of the 5 detention dams. That again, we own, we fund and we maintain. In addition to the mitigating effects of the dams, we have 37 hectares of reserves on Eskills, which are being revegetated and are now almost fully planted native flora. And as these trees grow and the forest debris increases, this will also assist in absorbing and slowing downstream flows. It can be clearly proven that the stormwater discharges from the development and in turn the 5 detention dams are minor and considerably less than if the area had remained pastoral or rural. The operation of the detention dams ensures that only small controlled volumes of stormwater enter the Bayview stormwater system, ensuring that it is more able to operate within its capacity. Without these dams, the Bayview drainage system would need to be of significant greater capacity. The dams are maintained by us collectively at our cost, which can be significant, and there are no benefits to us. We not only maintain the system, we save Napier City Council considerable expense in the sizing of the Bayview stormwater drains. And despite this, we're being asked to make large contributions to the Napier stormwater costs. Based on this information, there is absolutely no justification for this land to be rated 100% stormwater differential, let alone be based on capital values. This is especially so when your justification is that erroneous and simplistic concept of the higher your capital value, the more stormwater you discharge. That's so wrong in the rural areas. It might be right in town, but not in rural or semi-rural areas. It's totally wrong. In closing, as Napier City Council rates and targeted rates evolve over the future years, it is essential that due recognition is placed on the dam benefits to both Napier City Council and Bayview Stormwater Control. The placement on the outer boundaries of Eskills results in all the benefits accruing downstream to Napier City assets and properties. And as I stated, there is no benefits accruing to us upstream in Eskills. Without them, Napier City would be facing significantly higher costs in the sizing of the Bayview drains and stormwater control. Going forward, in future years, this needs to be recognised by Napier City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mervyn. That's some really useful information there. I just will open up for any questions from councillors. Councillor Bogue.
Sorry, I've got a procedural question. In our document, we have some officers' responses to some of the submissions, including Mr. Kite's, and I'm wondering, are these they obviously will go to the submitters, but will those be made available to the public, and in what form and when?
They are already available to the public because these agendas have been published, so they are, and then there will be individual responses sent to all submitters post the hearings. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kite, if you can just confirm for me, the individual properties, what is their distance to the council stormwater system?
On Eskills, there's some properties that discharge Cross Hill Road into Hastings District. There's a couple that discharge down into the Esk Valley, but the bulk of the properties discharge down the gullies, and as the gullies virtually exit Eskills, whether it goes into the winery or 100, 200 metres from State Highway 2, the closest... Yeah, the closest would probably be, well, it's a bit hard to say because the water goes down into the gullies and then flows along. I don't know. There could be some 200 metres, there could be some 300 metres, 400 metres.
But through you, Madam Chair, but in essence, you're saying that you're putting in and paying for it yourself, the capital works that protects the actual council systems downstream.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the detention dams, as I say, as a comparison, an area the size of the Onikawa industrial area, and it's got 3 discharge pipes that big. There's not much water coming out. It's controlled, and as I say, one of them comes to a roadside drain that is probably as wide as this table and as deep as this table. And that's, the drain is quite capable of handling that.
Thank you.
I will allow one more question because we have actually gone over time. Councillor McGrath.
I'm just, through the chair, just looking for some clarification. So you say these 3 pipes exit onto State Highway 2 into a drain?
Yep.
Is that drain covered by NCC or regional council? Does anyone?
We may need to take that offline to have council officers follow up on that for us.
I don't know who maintains those drains. Yeah, they definitely, those 3 drains definitely go under State Highway 2, and they're not big at all. Who maintains the drains besides State Highway 2? I don't know.
I'm more interested in the ownership of them at this stage. That could be 2 different questions.
Sorry.
They could be 2 different questions. Who maintains them? So.
Yep.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ruben. And I can confirm that due to the number of submissions that we have received regarding the change to the stormwater catchment map, which has led to the stormwater charge being applied to your property, will definitely be part of our deliberations on Wednesday in terms of actually rolling back those changes.
Yep.
So just wanted to provide you with that assurance that we will be
good.
discussing that.
That's appreciated.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now welcome Joe Huata to present, please.
Kia ora whānau.
Kia ora.
I feel like I'm a little bit out of my depth here. I'm not coming to speak about numbers or anything to do with what the other 2 have spoken about. I'm actually speaking from the heart. I've been away for about 27 years from Napier, but when I came, just before I came back, we bought a home, and so this is only my first year in paying rates. But I have spoken to a lot of my whānau, and they're already paying enough for rates as it is. And they're old, and they're already paying $60, $70 a week, or $50 a week. My comment actually to be here is that I'm just astounded at the fact that it's only been a year since the cyclone, and already we're talking about a $58 million plan. I want to know how many of you in the council have whānau members that have been traumatised by the cyclone, because you probably all have, but have you sat down with your whānau and actually asked them how are they doing? Because if I was to walk out into Emerson Street, it looks great. It really does. But now we want to make it prettier? Like, it doesn't seem right only a year later. 5 years maybe. But it's absolutely fine. Also, the library. I know that the old library had some earthquake issues. I understand that. But isn't there a building in Napier that you guys can use for your offices, or that we can use for another library? I attend the library, and I think the library is really important. But I just don't understand how we can spend so much money on a library and on a council building. I mean, I know you guys need your offices just as much as anybody else does, but the budget for me just doesn't cut it. That's so much money in so little time. And there are still houses out there that probably won't get built. There are still houses out there that haven't been taken over by their insurance companies. And it's sad to know that we're thinking about spending $58 million when people don't even have the resources to get their whānau on the map of living. And there was a couple of things just in comment to what the other person was speaking about. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council actually funds for some of those drains. I don't know now that you've mentioned it about where they actually do, because obviously there's a zone from where it is, but they told me that they what's the word? I can't even think of the word. But they fund for most of that anyway, so a part of that is not for the Napier City Council to worry about. And that's all I wanted to say, is I don't think we need to spend that much money in such little time, because there are still people out there who are grieving and are still traumatised. And I think that we all need to take that into consideration. And please don't up my rates, because I can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Just before you leave, I'll just see if any of the elected members have any questions. Is there any questions for Joe? Councillor Tariha.
Kia ora, good morning, Joe.
Morena.
Councillor Chair Tariha. I hold the environmental portfolio, and I'm a resident of Waiahiki, so I understand what you're saying, and just like to thank you for your submission this morning and presenting to us this morning. I've only been an elected member for just past halfway of this term, first term, but however I've been involved with the discussions with the library for going on probably over 5 years, and we want to bring businesses to the city, and I understand that the Emerson Street corridor has been going on for some time as well. I felt your submission reading it, and definitely understand. I've also had to move 4 times in the last 12 months, so people are struggling out there, and just like to thank you. I did have a question, but no, just thank you for your submission and totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, cool. I actually, there was a few people, that had a few things to say, and it's just spending money on things that we don't need. This whole of Marine Parade seems like there's so much waste. I mean, do people even go to the aquarium these days? It just seems like a lot of waste is going on. And I'm paying $29 a week for a gym membership that just shouldn't be. That's the highest in the world. That's the highest membership you'll ever get.
I pay $6
in the world.
a week for my gym.
$29, that's too much money. I don't even pay that for my power bill. But yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And next up we have Ron and Nairi Swenson. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Sit down. You've got the...
There, right, I'm Ron Swenson from Kaimata Road, Bayview. I think you've got it in front of you. Sorry, I better get my glasses. Yeah, we're a retired couple with limited income. We cannot believe that you, the council, are proposing a rate rise of 140% for the year 24-25. But not only that, with further rate rises of 10% in the following years, it equates to a huge lot of money that's going out on rates. How on earth are we going to come up with the money for such massive increases? Nowhere else in New Zealand that I've seen have had such rates rises. Are we being punished for having the foresight to buy a place in Bayview on the hill, and in doing so escape much of the damage from Cyclone Gabriel? We have a 1.7 hectare lifestyle block that could be subdivided if the council would allow it. That way another property could be paying rates, thus helping the council out. There was no other way of making a decent income off it. Last year, our rates were $3,742.97, and you, the council, are proposing for 24-25 that our rates will be $8,979.84. Huge increase of $5,236.87. On top of that, the regional council is proposing a large increase also. This is beyond a joke. In fact, it's devastating to us. What do we get for this massive increases? Nothing, but apart from our refuse collection and curbside recycling. Also, there was a charge for stormwater. Why? We've never ever had it before. The water, it's $763.83 we're going to get, and for nothing, the water flows off our hills. What doesn't go into the hill, and then it goes down onto transit land. So I don't see where it comes into the Napier City Council. Regional Council was proposing large increases also. Sorry, we have a private road maintained by our residents. We have our own water supply and septic tank, and so that's it. There's just the couple of other things. We have a greenie flat on our place we built. It's not, no one lives in it permanently. We have family, different ones come and stay. And so we pay our curbside refuge collection is $4.66, and so we charge for the 2 prop houses on it. We've only got 3 little black bins and the large one, which should actually only be 1. So, and both them there, and the curbside and recycling is $232.20. So if we only paid for 1, the curbside would be $116.10, refuge collection $233. Take off the stormwater there, it would drop it down at $1,113.23, which would then have an income of, say, $7,866, but it still leaves a difference of $4,123.77 increase on this 1 year. And that includes still rating at 110%, which I think is a bit over the top. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Ron, are you aware that a significant portion of that 140% increase actually relates to the change in your land value?
Yeah, but I can't do anything with it.
So it's out of our control because we don't set the land value. So within our rating process, we can't actually do anything to mitigate how a change in your land value actually impacts the rates that you're paying.
Yeah, but you employed the people who set the rates.
No. Who set the rates?
Well, the quotable value,
No, we don't.
Employed them?
We don't employ them, no. They're a completely independent body.
I read they did.
And that whole process is completely independent of council.
Yeah. Well.
So, Councillor Price.
Just one quick question, Ron. How much do you pay for the stormwater alone?
We pay, last year we never paid any. We never
paid it.
So we never paid it before, and this year you're proposing $763.83, which I can't see what we're paying for. Honestly can't.
Any further questions? As I said to the previous submitter mover, we will be looking at that stormwater rate. So just want you to know we will be discussing that further on Wednesday. Yeah. And also with regards to your refuse collection, if you actually are only filling that bin enough for it to be collected fortnightly rather than weekly, you can apply for a rebate to get a discount on that.
Yeah, but I'm paying for 2 lots, not just one.
Because of your
because of the granny flat. So I'm paying for 2. But as you say, we sometimes we only have it collected once a fortnight.
But that's up to us.
But that's up to us. You know, we're quite happy at the once a week, but I can't see why we should be paying for 2 houses on the property. and one hasn't got permanent residence or anything like that in it. So, I mean, that's $1,100 off rates a year is a lot of money. And it's still 110% that we're paying. So I think that's pretty tough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Nairi. I'd like to invite Ryan Hambleton from Sport Hawke's Bay. I believe we have a PowerPoint presentation. There should be a clicker there.
Yep, we've got a clicker. Can't promise it'll work, but... Morena, everybody, and on behalf of Sport Hawke's Bay, thank you for having us today. I'd just quickly like to introduce my two colleagues. So I have Sue Smith sitting alongside me. She's our General Manager, and Tina Hazlitt is our Spaces and Places lead at Sport Hawke's Bay. I'm the CEO, and also just like to acknowledge our Chairman, Councillor Taylor, who's here also. It's so good looking around the table and seeing so many friendly faces, everyone so many that support the physical activity sector, from governance roles through to being on the ground in terms of actually being part of the sector. You will understand the benefit of physical activity, and that's really beneficial for us and in support of the submission. So I also want to acknowledge Thunis and the council officers who we work really closely alongside, and appreciate the partnership we have with you around our contract for service that we hold there. I guess one of the big things for us, let's see if this works. Yep. For us is we really want to highlight the work that's happening across Napier communities. And it reflects the high proportion of work that we do in the communities across Napier. From everything from open water swim, supporting tamariki through some of our initiatives, capability build within our regional sports organisation. So much happens within the Napier boundary, and that's really exciting. And we need your support to do that going forward as well. In our submission, we had 8 recommendations, and all point to one common theme, and that's what we're here to talk about, and that's around collaboration. And that's where we want to support Napier City Council with some of the difficult decisions that you have to make over the next 12 months or LTP period as well. And whilst we have there's a lot of words there, death by PowerPoint, what we really want to highlight is highlight 2. And these 2 are around the support for regional planning, two regional planning projects, one being the Regional Spaces and Places Plan, and the second being the Regional Aquatics Plan. And then the second recommendation is supporting the planning principles and recommendations of the 2023 Regional Sports Field Review, which Napier City Council provided a lot of support around. The importance of both of these projects is going to help support and inform council decisions going forward, and to ensure, and what I'm sure is going to be a very tight fiscal period for us all, every dollar spent on the play, active, rec and sports sector has a increase in terms of return on investment. The real positive that we can kind of kick off with this is Sport New Zealand have confirmed their support of both of these projects, or these strategies, with a $40,000 investment, and we were hoping to kick off with a regional spaces and places planning plan as our priority project first. And what we're wanting to do is as I said, inform council decisions and support you with the information and tools that you're going to require as we go forward. We're also having these conversations with our other council partners, and those are being warmly received today. Our commitment to the region is unwavered and will continue to be as it has been. As I said, we all face a difficult financial period over the next wee while, and Sport Hawke's Bay wants to be here to support, and that's where I really hang off that collaboration piece. We want to work with council to realise the recommendations of that 2023 Regional Sports Field Review, and Tina's our lead on that one there. we're working in 12 schools throughout Napier communities through our Healthy Active Learning initiative. So that's working with teachers and tamariki to increase an understanding of the benefits of being physically active, and that's been a really important piece. An exciting development is across Hawke's Bay, we've got 5 kura that are going to be part of the Active As initiative, 40 secondary schools across the Motu. William Clenzo College is going to be receiving $100,000 per annum for the next 3 years, and that's to increase physical activity. And a really important bit of that is using rangatahi voice, voice of the participant or voice of rangatahi to develop those new opportunities and support educational outcomes, but use physical activity as the driver there. One that I'm sure is close to Councillor Mawson's heart is the investment into a disability advisor. So we've had a contract with Sport New Zealand to have a disability advisor for the last 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, due to government cuts, that contract hasn't been renewed across the Motu, not just Sport Hawke's Bay. Thanks to the support of our board, that role will continue. We will continue to support the disability sector and work alongside councils and those that are providing those opportunities to look at ways that people living with a disability can be more physically active more often. We want to support Napier-based kura marae, community groups, schools through our Tūmanawa Fund, and that's been confirmed for the next 4 years. We have $686,000 to give out to organisations, and we want to work with council around how can we support council outcomes in some of the activity and delivery that they're wanting to do. As I spoke about, the regional play active rec and sport plans that we are hoping to achieve, and in a really big year for Napier City Council, the 150th commemoration. Sue and our team are continuing to support how we can what that looks like at the second half of the year, and we're looking forward to hopefully bringing hundreds, if not thousands, of young people to McLean Park for a bit of a celebration of physical activity. So we're here to work alongside you. Again, everything we do is wanting to help inform decisions for the play active rec and sport sector. Very supportive of the work you're doing. Those recommendations we talk about, the housing the opportunity that we can partner around with housing in terms of ensuring green spaces are there. So again, that collaboration piece is something that we are wanting to work alongside council and acknowledge the support council have provided to our sector over the last 12 months in what's been a difficult time, and look forward to working alongside you all in the years ahead. That's me.
Great, thank you very much, Ryan. Open up for questions. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. Thank you for your submission. I noticed that in it you suggested that you recommend that we develop a new play policy, and I noticed that was specific to Napier, whereas your other plans were regional. And just thinking, we're quite a small place, what do you see as the benefit of us doing it at a Napier level rather than at a Hawke's Bay level?
That's a great question. I think the benefit of developing a play policy per region or per council is that you get a chance to really embed it inside the organisation. Because play is actually about a philosophical approach, and we do have a regional approach to it, but we really need each organisation to make a commitment to understanding the benefits of play. And you can only really do that when each council has its own policy that not only reflects, because play is not about playgrounds, it's actually about bringing that, as I said, that philosophical approach to the way we wrangle with problems and challenges that we've got ahead of us. It brings, curiosity and creativity, and it brings a new aspect. And you can only do that when it's really deeply embedded inside the organisation.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Through Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you for your submission. A quick question about the Healthy Active Learning Initiative in the 12 schools. Does that include Learn to Cycle programs to promote cycling within Hawke's Bay? Thank you.
No, it doesn't. So we can support the schools. So we are doing some work in Maraenui Bilingual School at the moment around some bike maintenance and things like that, but Health Active Learning doesn't provide funding for program delivery. Yeah.
we do receive funding to do cycle school specific programs in Hastings, through Hastings District Council. Unfortunately, that's through their council, and as a result, we are unable to deliver to Napier schools, although we do receive a number of requests to support learn to cycle programs for tamariki across Napier.
Any further questions? Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora koutou, morena you guys. Thank you so much for the submission. Just wondering, the $35,000 that you've suggested would be the contribution that Napier City Council would make. I think you said, Ryan, that this kind of approach has been warmly received by other councils, etc. So I just wondered, have you had commitment from the other councils, and if you haven't, is the amount about the same that you're going and asking for?
Yeah, so we're in this similar process to this with, so we had Central Hawke's Bay District Council presentation last week. We're having conversations with HDC around that. The regional approach has worked, especially for the sports fields review, so that was per capita.
Yeah,
Proportionate, but yeah, it's worked. We've got track record of it working, and that's how this portion has been decided upon as well. So no commitment as of yet, apart from the $40,000 from Sport New Zealand.
Yeah, if I just add a little bit to that to clarify, the Sport New Zealand is willing to fund each planning project up to the value of 50%. And then the balance, the 50% balance, is worked out on a proportionate basis amongst the other councils. So we get, CHB is not paying quite as much as Napier would, and Napier's not paying quite as much as HDC would.
Thank you, that's great to have that clarification. And just to follow on from Councillor Crown's question, would these reviews be at risk of not going ahead if not all of the councils actually commit to the funding that they're being asked for?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So it does need to be an all-in to make it work and make it proceed.
Yeah. We've got a fairly flexible model as to how we approach that. We can spin the payments out. And certainly not all $35,000 would be required at once. I mean, we can probably only tackle one project for a start. I mean, the first one would be the Regional Spaces and Places Plan, with the aquatics one possibly hot on the heels. Depends on the demand and the readiness of the councils to be able to undertake both strategies. But we have got a clear desire for the aquatic strategy to be the next off the block.
No, that additional information, we've gone over time solely, Councillor Pillay, but thank you for that additional information, very, very useful, and thank you all for coming to present to us today.
Thank you. Good luck for the rest of your day.
Thank you. And our final submitter prior to us having a quick break, I welcome Paul Eadie. Welcome, Paul.
Good morning. Sorry, I'll just set my timer. Firstly, just want to say hello to so many friendly faces over there, and to some former colleagues. Thank you for the massive amount of work that I know goes into an LTP behind the scenes at the officer level and up through the management chain and to the councillors as well. I know that's far from, I think a lot of the public don't realise how much work is involved in just getting to this point, let alone about what's to come. My presentation will be, I just want to touch on the perspective driving my submission, and it's based around a principle of balancing the social, economic and environmental and cultural well-beings that are explicit in the legislation. And in speaking, I'm drawing on the knowledge of the Better Business Case methodology required by New Zealand Treasury, as well as my experience in researching and trying to apply a whole lot of work done by Swinburne University in Melbourne, who developed Melbourne and Victoria, who developed a body of work around the local government reorganisation in Victoria in the late 90s and the rationalisation of public facilities in the early 2000s. Basically, I'm going to make three fundamental points. Affordable housing is a need of the whole community, and if NCC is not going to do it, who is? Fiscal sustainability requires responsible debt management, and we have to make some hard decisions at the moment. And my recommendation is to park the nice-to-haves today and focus only on the absolutely necessaries. The reason for this is that we need to keep fiscal headroom for future ratepayers to deal with the things that we don't even know are coming yet. And if you want an example of that, who would have predicted that we would have had a Gabrielle 3 years ago? Finally, the council organisation needs to invest in itself so it can do its job better and be more in a more disciplined manner. So firstly, fiscal sustainability and investing in itself. So this touches on the submission parts of resilience, fees and charges, tourist facilities and office accommodation. We need to be hard-nosed in our number crunching from a ratepayer's perspective. Now is not the time for nice things. Everybody is struggling financially. Business cases must take the most conservative, the fiscal discipline requires that we take the most conservative, pessimistic view in determining that we're going to get a positive return on investment from council assets, be they financial ones or physical ones, like buildings. Like the buildings being used by the tourist operations. We need to be able to quantify the value returned, whether it's social, economic, environmental or cultural, in hard quantifiable terms, and the tools are there. We need to use them. Fees and charges should reflect the cost of delivery, including overheads and depreciation. Activities need to be self-financing, be they the commercial tourism activities, paying for themselves through fees and charges, or whether they be a targeted rate for those who benefit the most from those activities. They cannot come from the general ratepayer's pocket. We just don't have that money in our pockets anymore. The other option could be through a rental charge from the activities to Napier City Council to ensure that the properties are being properly funded for depreciation and future capital remediation. Again, this is a change of approach that needs to be done internally that requires investment and resourcing. My major concern is that if the level of debt proposed in the 10-year mark is close to $500 million, that's going to be a huge interest burden on future ratepayers. It's going to come out of the revenue that council generates, and it's going to be on top of having to fund still undepreciated asset renewals or replacements, and what limits is that going to place on future ratepayers' ability to fund the challenges that are coming that we're yet to face. So with affordable housing, affordability versus profit, who's going to provide it if not NCC? Can we rely on central government? Have they been a reliable partner to date? Is Kāinga Ora going to do the job? Do we want our people to be fronting up and paying commercial rates to a commercial developer for social housing? My main driver for this is having been a chair of a board of trustees in a low decile school, I know the effect of poor housing on kids and where that takes us. We see it on our streets every day. We see them wearing gang patches. We see them sitting outside shops. Those kids become disconnected from a community without roots, without somewhere to live. Radio New Zealand reported last year that there are models of council-appointed trust ownership that allows housing providers to supply housing, however, for the tenants to claim the accommodation supplement and therefore make commercial rent charging more viable and therefore make it easier to fund operation and maintenance, to the point where the Manawatui Housing Trust is now building its stock and adding to the social housing stock down there. And finally, why would we just focus on retirees? They are not the only generation or age bracket that requires support from the rest of society. Children do too. So in closing, my main points are tighten our fiscal belts. More of an approach needs to be taken where the customers and the beneficiaries, the people who benefit from our services foot the bill, not just the ratepayer. Invest in hard-nosed organisational productivity enhancements that run our activities and services along commercial lines. rather than internal recharging. We need to be slim, we need to be agile, we need to be hard-nosed, and we need to be commercial. And finally, adopt an ownership vehicle that provides affordable housing under a community ownership model to all in need, but most importantly to those that rely on us, be they retirees or children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'll open up for any questions from councillors. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much for your extremely passionate submission there, Paul. Just wondering around the headroom that you would like to see maintained for use in case of emergency. I see where you're going with that, has merit. Do you have an idea of what sort of proportion or some idea of how much headroom you would expect to see?
We're coming from a historical background where ratepayers, including myself, pretty much every ratepayer in this room has benefited from having historically some of the lowest rates in the country for decades. And we're never going to have that kind of headroom again in terms of debt. But dare I say it, the current government setting the task is that we need to minimise debt as much as reasonably practicable. Now, I can't give you a number, but prudence would say if we only do what we absolutely need to do, then whatever's left over is a prudent amount of headroom in the current fiscal environment.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your well thought out submission, Paul. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. That brings us to the conclusion of our first group of submitters. We do have a short break, and we can pop down to the boardroom on the bottom floor, staff and elected members. But I would like everybody back here, please, at 11:15. Or just beforehand, so that we're ready to go at 11:15 on the dot. Our first submitter after this break is joining us via Zoom. So, yeah, back here ready to go before that. Thank you very much.
Back, everybody. We will get started, and our next submitter is joining us online. So I welcome Dan Scott. Good to have you with us.
Kia ora. You hear me?
We may, yep. Yes, if you talk, we'll make sure the sound's coming through okay.
Awesome.
Yep.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Dan. I'm a 20-year-old full-time student from Taradale. I'm sorry I can't be there in person today, but I study at the University of Canterbury, so I'm currently freezing down in Christchurch. First off, I'd like to commend the council on the bold steps they've taken in presenting a plan with such large rates increases. I know there's a lot of discontent around Napier over that, and that kind of been an easy approach to take. But I think those who are unhappy need to look at the context where for decades, low rates increases have been most councils' main priority, including in Napier, and that's landed us with a really, really bad infrastructure deficit. So thanks to the council for taking the initiative to fix these issues of underinvestment now, particularly at a time when our operational costs are higher anyway due to the cyclone recovery process, before the cost of getting the infrastructure back to being fit for purpose gets even higher. With that being said, I do think there are some issues in the plan that has been put forward for consultation though. First off, I'm disappointed the council's preferred option on the council housing front to sell off the social housing villages. Council's most important role is to protect the well-being of everyone in Napier, and you can't do that while selling off the affordable housing options, which for many families are the only chance they'll have at getting a roof over their heads. In the 2018 census, I think over 500 people in Napier were listed as being severely housing deprived. And after COVID, after the skyrocketing cost of living, I think it's fair to say that's probably a higher number by now. That's not to mention nationwide housing and rental costs going up massively the last few years, almost certainly higher in Hawke's Bay as well after we lost 300 houses to red zoning after Cyclone Gabrielle. And so how are families who can't afford market rents in Napier at the moment going to live anywhere if we take away those affordable housing options? The best case scenario in this approach still places more strain on our already stretched thin emergency housing providers. And we'll just be forcing families onto the streets or into sleeping in cars if we take away those social housing options. I understand current housing stock's expensive to maintain, largely due to its age, but it's clear from your approach to infrastructure in the plan that you all understand the prudence of investing when it's needed. And if we can't afford the upkeep in our current properties, please build alternative, newer, easier to maintain social housing villages before selling off our current stock. When we've got a cost of living crisis, when we've got a new government signalling slash funding to Kāinga Ora, when we've got a woeful job market like we've got right now, we can't afford to go without social housing options and affordable housing in our city. Next, I wanted to commend the council for looking to continue with a resilience rate. I'm really pleased to see, especially after Cyclone, that the council's acknowledging that climate change isn't just some abstract thing, but it is a real imminent threat to our communities that's already impacting us, and that we need to be preparing already for events in the future. But climate change response should be twofold, and while you are following through on the adaptation front, I think this plan's really lacking. It comes to the even more urgent issue of climate change mitigation. In the list of significant infrastructure projects you've given us for the next 10 years, there's a real lack of projects aimed at reducing our citywide emissions. You did say as a council in 2022 that the next long-term plan would commit the city to an emissions reduction target, and nothing in the consultation material anywhere on the Say It Napier website indicates that that has been done in this plan. And the draft infrastructure strategy doesn't refer once to emissions or to any projects intended to reduce emissions. After the last few years we've had, I think Napier should know better than anywhere else in New Zealand how important it is to limit the effects of climate change. And our city should lead the way on this front, but we are lagging behind. We should form an ambitious emissions reduction target. We should make sure it encompasses everything from transport and industry to cruise ship emissions. We should stick rigidly to it. We have a really car-centric city. Infrastructure for taking public transport or active transport options such as cycling is pretty poor, and 57% of Napier's emissions come from transport. By tackling that problem, we'll not just tackle environmental issues, but we'll also make our city more accessible for our disabled population, our low-income population, our elderly population. Addressing that should be a priority for the council. I also want to touch quickly on the CCTO topic. It makes sense we should be aiming to find ways to maximise return on the council's investments to secure financial sustainability. But I'm aboard that this is being planned in a way that, quote, core social obligations of council would not be passed to the CCTO. This money belongs to the people of Napier, not just to the council. So however it's invested needs to be fair and ethical. The CCTO shouldn't have the right to invest in things like fossil fuel companies, since funding these companies jeopardises the futures of our children, our grandchildren, our city, communities, and our planet as a whole. It should have no right to invest our money in companies that show disregard for the sanctity of human life, like those financially supporting the atrocities in Gaza, like companies exploiting workers in developing countries. It's imperative there is oversight on the CCTO, that they do have those social obligations, same as the council, and that all of the money that they invest that belongs to Napier is invested ethically. And finally, I just want to finish off saying I'm a bit disappointed it's only a 3-year plan we're being presented with, not a long-term one as per normal. I do get that there are extenuating circumstances after the cyclone, but when we have large portions of the city to rebuild, there's no better opportunity to think long-term. I think we should be focusing on building a Napier of tomorrow and addressing the issues already present in our city through the recovery process, not just rebuilding the Napier from the day before the cyclone struck and then trying to improve the city from there. And I fear having just a 3-year plan doesn't allow for that approach, but I hope you can prove me wrong. So to quickly summarize, please don't sell off crucial social housing when we have no real alternatives. Please stick to your word and form the emissions reduction target that you promised you would, and prioritize projects that'll ensure we meet the target. And please don't let Napier's money be invested with a complete disregard for ethics and social responsibility. Got it.
Thank you very much, Dan. With regards to our housing, if we were to make it a condition of any sale transaction that those houses being sold would have to be retained as social housing with another provider, is that something that you would be able to support, because it would mean there wouldn't be any loss in that social housing overall for the community?
I think that could still be supported, but I don't know if private social housing providers would be as likely to have subsidised rents or to have such low rents as it would be if it was provided directly from council. But if it wouldn't affect the affordability of the housing, then that could be supported.
Thank you. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora, Dan, thank you so much for your very well thought out submission. I did just actually want to make a quick comment to let you know that next week in one of our committee meetings, we have the Napier City Council Greenhouse Gas Emissions Climate Mitigation Plan coming to us as the governors. So that work has been undertaken by our officers and will be presented to us next week. So kia ora.
Fantastic, thank you.
Any further questions for Dan? And I guess a final comment from myself, Dan, with regards to your comments on the fact that we're only doing a 3-year plan. We've been given the ability to do that. That does not mean we haven't still actually done all the work around a 10-year plan and a 30-year infrastructure plan. That is still all the foundations of the 3-year plan, so we're still definitely doing that medium to long-term planning and thinking alongside the fact that we've been able to do just a 3-year plan this year.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to Zoom in and join us, and yeah, thank you for your submission.
Thanks, Dan.
Kia ora. Have a good day.
Now, just a reminder, because I think we will have a number of people in the room who weren't in the room when we initially started, that each submitter has 10 minutes and 5 minutes to speak and 5 minutes for questions from elected members. So a soft ballot 4 minutes, a hard ballot 5 minutes, and then another soft ballot 9 minutes and a hard ballot at 10 minutes. Also, just for elected members, if on your schedule there's a name with a line through it, that is because the submitter has no longer been able to join us. So just so that for your awareness there. So I'd like to invite our next submitter, Alicia Atkinson, to join us, please. Okay, so not currently with us. So we will move on to John Sutherland. Yes, thank you, up the front here. Welcome, John.
Hello, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. I'm a bit overwhelmed by the number of people in front of me. However, I'll do my best. My subject is not, or does not affect the volume of people that a rates rise might affect, but it does affect people, particularly of my age group. I've been a member of the Ocean Spa complex next door here since 2018. I've been retired since for 10 years. And recently the fees increased to be a member by 50%. And that doesn't sound much, but it's a big complex, and for older people it's an important complex. I'm a full member of the facility, which gives me gym and pool facilities 7 days a week, so it's a good thing. But strangely, there's no fee reduction for seniors as there are in most other facilities. So an older person pays the same as a younger person who's still making money. A comparable gym that a colleague of mine goes to in Mount Maunganui offers a fee for seniors of $40 a month, or $240 for 6 months. My fees next door, $810 for 6 months. They do have attendance time restrictions for seniors, but however, I believe that this is inclined to increase attendance during the quiet time of the day when the facilities aren't that used. And this, in their case, the patronage increased the offsetting of the costs that they found by reducing fees for senior people. Oddly, Ocean Spa do offer senior discount for casual attendance to the pool. So if a gold card holder goes in right now, they'll get a 25% reduction to have a swim. But they don't offer it for members, which is your Napier community. It's not your tourists, it's not your walk-in people, it's people who live here. I believe a 25% reduction for seniors for full use, that is full use of the facilities, or a 50% reduction for seniors with reduced hours, say 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock Monday to Friday, would be reasonable. Ocean Spas open 16 hours a day, and at those offset hours it would mean you get a 75% reduction in your use. However, though, that has to be reflected if there's going to be a reduction in fees. These fees, if that was acceptable, would still be considerably more expensive than any other complexes. Now, we know it's a beautiful complex and it's got a lovely location and it's got a lot of positives. However, it is the only complex in our area. Like myself, like many other old people, have arthritis, have joint complaints, and as you get older you'll find that out for yourselves. One place that can really work there is Ocean Spa. I use the gym and keep flexible and nimble. I've had 2 knee replacements and a hip replacement, and if it wasn't for that place next door, I doubt I could have achieved those and still be walking around fit and healthy. It's the gym and then the use of hot water, the sauna and the spa that makes my life livable. I've noticed a considerable decline in older people using it during the week in the last 4 months, and I mean considerable. I hardly see any older people in there now, and the ones that I've spoken to and I've asked, I said, why are you there? They said, we cannot afford the fees. It's as simple as that. They're gone. They have nowhere else to go. The one thing that I would ask is that please don't make the need for the complex to pay itself be a negative to your elderly population. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Are there any questions from councillors? No, very well presented submission. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Glenn Marshall to make your submission, please. Welcome, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak. There's a few issues that I want to touch on. The first one is the housing issue. Personally, I think it's pretty gutless what the council's done there in terms of the options that you've given, and I note that the one is basically where you're not stopping, you're not proposing to sell off the housing for the retired people, and yet you're looking at selling the housing for the rest of them, and I think that's discriminatory in itself, because if you're going to sell off some, sell off all of it. Like, why should a disabled person be treated differently to someone who's over 65? And the second thing that I really want to hit home on is I honestly believe that we should sell off all of that social housing, because social housing is incredibly important in New Zealand, but in a time when the shit's hitting the fan with our finances in Napier, that should not be the council's responsibility. Like, you guys aren't stumping up to fund the ambulances and the schools and the hospitals. Housing should be no different. You should get back to your knitting, you know, the core infrastructure, etc. And then I just want to talk. I've just talked about the frivolous spending, and the aquarium is like a classic example. It's just unbelievable that you guys just keep funding that, and it loses over $1 million a year. It doesn't really bring in any tourists into Hawke's Bay, or marginally. How many people do you seriously think come to Napier because of that aquarium? Most of our locals don't use it. It's just, yeah, it's just it beggars belief, you know. So I honestly, I've thought of you guys quite a bit, and if you were a household, your roof is leaking, your hot water cylinder needs replacing, but you're more concerned about basically getting a spa pool or a sauna in your house, you know. It's just focusing on your priorities. So classic one is just in the media recently, like that Waka birth down there. I don't know if it's true or not, but if you guys are looking at spending up to $3 million on that, it's just it's just breathtaking, you know. And that old fellow that was talking before about Ocean Spa, like I go down there as well, and the classic one is you've now got security guards down there, and I know there's been the odd issue with the gangs and all that, but ring the police, you know, instead of like, it's just, yeah, it just costs on and on and on, you know. And Kirsten Wise, I'd just like to comment on a thing that you sort of said, and I actually thought it was a disgraceful comment, when you talked about the office, you know, that we need new office premises, which we do, and you sort of softened it and talked about intergenerational loans. And again, I think that's a disgrace, say that you guys are running the finances to the point that we're talking about intergenerational loans instead of prioritising our key things and keeping our debt under control. So, yeah. And one last thing, I sort of thought of you guys as the Briscoes in terms of, you know, store-wide 50% off discounts, and where it's not 50%, the price is just padded up and then you knock down the price. And by that, I say, when you said, the rates were originally going to be 43%, but now we've been able to get it down to 23.7%. So, and one last comment that I'd like to make is my wife and I, we're fortunate enough to own our own house without a mortgage. So I'm not actually here on behalf of myself. I'm here on the silent majority that just got to suck up these rates increases. So basically my plea is just to prioritise, yeah, just treat it like a house. Say, let's get the roof fixed and let's get the hot water cinder sorted, and don't worry about the spa pool sort of thing. So, yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Glenn. We'll open up for any questions from councillors. No questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Good as gold. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, we had an indication, Maurice Field, that you were not going to be here today, but I understand you are here. Is that correct?
Must be Andrew Pearce.
No, okay. moving right along. We'll just check to see if Alicia Atkinson is with us now. No. Okay, so therefore our next submitters I'd like to invite up is Andrew Pearce and Joe McAleese. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I believe we have a presentation which should be up on the screen.
Yes, and you have a clicker in front of you somewhere to operate it. Yep.
So Joe McAleese and I are here representing around 20 people who live in Kaingaroa Place, but the issues that I'm going to talk about also affect people in Kaimata Heights and in Esk Hills, and you'll be hearing excuse me, from them in latest submissions. So I'd like to draw your attention to the two right-hand columns of this chart. This is for the individual properties on Kaingaroa Place. The bold numbers in the left column-headed increase are the increases in rates, not the actual rates, running at around $3,000 a property increase. And the percentage increases range from 73% to 130% and run out at an average of 105%. That's versus 23.7% for Napier as an average. That's the problem that we want to address. We understand that we know how this is driven, but nonetheless we think this is a matter that needs to be addressed. And over the course of 3 years, a comparison between a typical property on Kaingaroa Place with a current rates of $2,900 versus the Napier average of $2,880, so pretty much exactly the same. Over 3 years, that property in Kaingaroa Place goes to 154% increase, whereas an equivalent property in Napier goes to 46%. Does anyone in this room think that's fair, reasonable, or equitable? I doubt very much whether anyone does. We have tried to be constructive in our submission to offer a series of proposals that will mitigate, not eliminate, mitigate our issue at the same time as not making your job as a council harder to raise the rates revenue that you need to raise. So we propose three things. The first is to double a uniform annual general charge and make revenue neutral reductions in general rates. The second is to increase the differential reduction in the general rates to 30% for Bayview rural residential properties like ours. And the third is to set a limit on maximum rates increase in any year for a property of 33%, and I will speak to each of those in turn. We propose increasing the UAGC, as you can see, to $1,100 per rateable unit. That shifts the burden of rates to the UAGC from being about an eighth of the rates to a bit over a quarter of the rates, generating $29 million in round numbers. Reducing the general rating factor to take $14.5 million less. What we propose is within the 30% maximum for UAGC, as long as the total rates are at least $95.6 million, and my estimate is that you're taking more than $100 million, so it's within the rules. And this is a reasonably practical option for achieving your rates revenue objective, and I use the phrase reasonably practicable option because that is the terminology that's used in the Local Government Act and in the Local Government Rating Act. Secondly, we propose that the differential rating for Bayview rural residential properties increases from 10%, a couple of $100 a year at the moment, to 30%. In our street, as you can see, we pay $1,200 a year to maintain our road, curbs, verges, stormwater detention, water pumping. We don't have street lighting. We have no rubbish collection or recycling at the gate. And we don't have pressurised water for either domestic supply or for fire protection. We provide all of that. Imagine if you were going to some other part of Napier and saying, you've got to pay $6,000 in rates, but you don't get any of that. A 30% differential approximates on general rates, the new general rates would approximate that $1,200. Again, we would say this is a reasonably practicable option to compensate for the lack of services. What is the rates impact? We think there's around 100 properties. I've doubled that to say there's 200 at $1,200 a piece, 240,000. 17 cents per week if you spread that over your 27,000 rateable properties. Even if you do both of those things, our rates increases will still typically be 65%. If they were limited to 33%, that's still 40% greater than the Napier average, and it's still higher than any of the examples that are given in the table in your consultation document. That would reduce our limit by a couple of $1,000s for a typical property and more widely in the places that I've spoken about. Maybe there's 200 properties affected. I've assumed 400. That's $800,000 spread over those 27,000 rateable units, 57 cents a week. 5 minutes. So where to from here? You could say to us, well, we can't do the UAGC increase or the 33% limit on rates because we haven't consulted on those. We might possibly be able to do something in terms of the differential rate. That leaves you, I think, in a very difficult position because you have not identified all the reasonably practicable options for achieving your rates revenue objective, and you haven't evaluated or publicly reported on their advantages and disadvantages. And these are mandatory requirements of the Local Government Act. You simply haven't done that. That's a fairly precarious position from a procedural perspective. Don't really want to go there. The proposals that we've made are reasonably practicable options that achieve your rates revenue target, resolve some gross inequities, and address a procedural oversight. We ask that you give our proposals serious and careful consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I would like to just acknowledge your very detailed and, carefully constructed submission. I can see that you've spent a significant period of time working on this, so thank you. We do appreciate it, and that you've come to us with some proposals. It needs to be recognised and acknowledged, so thank you so much. I'll just open up to any questions from councillors. Councillor Price, followed by Councillor Crystal.
Andrew, just a quick question. Is the stormwater rate in those figures you've given?
Yes and no. It is in the 105% average increases. So for my property, for example, where the rates would be going to 6,500, if the stormwater rate goes out, it reduces that to going from 3,000 to 6,000. It will be very nice to have, and it is entirely inappropriate that we should be rated for stormwater, given that we're required to be stormwater neutral.
Thank you.
Councillor Crystal.
Through the Mayor, thank you for your very detailed submission, Andrew. Just a question. We know that your rates rise has been driven by the value increase in your properties by QV. My question is, have you put a submission into QV to review the huge increase you've had in your values?
No, I haven't, but I do know that people who have put in such a request have received a letter back from QV saying that they have been instructed by the Napier City Council not to consider any such objections. And if you don't believe me about that, I can show you the physical document.
Can we, yes.
Now, whether that's correct or not is not my problem.
Yeah.
It is something that you will need to resolve between yourselves and QV. Other people have, I know, put in requests, and they have been basically told, don't bother. Nothing is going to happen.
They've been told that by QV?
By QV, yes.
Okay.
And you will hear from another submitter later in these sessions who will tell you exactly what the response to QV has been to their submission. their request.
Yeah, we would greatly appreciate if you could provide us with those documents from QB. Thank you. You do have those available?
There's somebody in the back here who has exactly that letter, and I'm sure that can be provided today.
Excellent, thank you. Oh, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. Thank you for your submission, Andrew. Just a question of clarification. When your suggestion is a 30% differential, do you mean a 30% discount, essentially, or a 70% discount to get you down to 30%?
No, a 30% discount on the general rate, yes.
Thank you.
That equates almost exactly to $1,200, both for our properties on Kaingaroa Place, and I know a very similar number for the people who are in Esk Hills.
Thank you. Any further questions? No?
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Joe. Appreciate it. I would like to invite Phil Ryan to present, please. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you. That's a hard act to follow. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'd firstly like to acknowledge the work of the council staff and councillors. Yours is not an easy job. There are many competing pressures, not the least being 625 pages of papers for your council meeting. My submission will focus on three things: maintaining the current housing portfolio, my experience of dealing with financial difficulties and rising costs, and the inflationary impact on ratepayers. The Council's housing portfolio has been built up over the last 60 years and involves both social and retirement housing. Councils were entitled to preferential housing loans from central government to build these homes, and these loans have been repaid. Council are therefore sitting on a significant unencumbered housing asset. Council have also received millions of dollars in rental income from these properties that have been absorbed into the consolidated fund. These properties have not been modernised or upgraded and are now faced with healthy homes legislation that mandates they must be upgraded. The cost of doing this is seen as prohibitive, and consideration has been given to selling some or all of this housing stock. Council has received subsidised funding to build these properties, repaid the debt, banked the rental income, and not adequately maintained these homes for decades. You have a substantial asset on your balance sheet, no debt against it, and a maintenance cost to upgrade the buildings. If Council need to focus on the maintenance and financial stability of this portfolio, then transfer the unencumbered asset into a separate entity, borrow the money needed to upgrade the assets, and use the rental income to retire the debt and continue to maintain the properties. If Council need to maintain the social housing stock so they can be considered a community housing provider and receive the income-related rent subsidy, then that should be investigated. The housing stock should not be sold. The second part of my submission is financial management in tough times. I have 25 years finance experience running large family-owned corporate entities in Hawke's Bay. I have faced good and bad economic times and have often been faced with managing the finances of these entities with the threat of bank funding being withdrawn. During those times, we have to make some very difficult decisions. A sinking lid policy was introduced. No new staff were employed. Pay rises were stopped. Line-by-line reviews of operating costs were undertaken and reductions made across the board. Capital expenditure was limited to depreciation only, and new capital projects were curtailed. Vanity projects were cancelled. Surplus and/or non-performing assets were sold. What does this have to do with proposed rate rises? 11% of the proposed 23% rate rises are for increased staff costs. One of my concerns is that some of these are already being incurred. The rationale for the increase includes Council has employed more staff, reference to Ocean Spar in the media, is planning to add additional staff to manage future issues, water, infrastructure, etc. I assume new staff will be paid more than current staff and/or all staff are receiving pay rises. Part of the problem is that council is not constrained by an independent party like a bank, where excessive increases in labour and operating costs would not be financed. It is easy to justify increases in staff numbers and to reward current staff, but commercial entities do not operate this way in difficult times. Sacrifices are made, people may lose their jobs, or they choose to vote with their feet if they don't receive the remuneration they think they deserve. This is the reality of the commercial world. I suggest council think and act as if they were a commercial entity without recourse to ratepayer funds for additional staff numbers and/or increases in remuneration. Council is considering spending $58 million on a new library and office building. Apart from perceived savings in office rental income, there can be no justification for this expenditure and increasing rates at this time. Libraries can be housed in any building in town. The council does not have to own the buildings that house the library. In 20 years' time, it is unlikely people will use libraries as they do now. Council absorbed available office space when they decamped from the old council buildings and have been operating successfully from rented office space for the last 5 or 6 years. I personally find the current customer service centre excellent and far less intimidating than the previous building. Requirements for office space are changing. Technology, COVID, focus on employee health and wellbeing has seen office space become more flexible. People are sometimes more productive when working away from the office. Hot desks are the norm, and meetings can be held using a variety of audio and visual means. If you need to rearrange the office space you currently lease to improve efficiency and/or productivity, that is a much better outcome than building new offices. In my recent experience, there have been very few major projects built on time, to spec and under budget. It is likely the $58 million cost will blow out. Once started, this process can't be stopped, so ratepayers will be lumbered with any cost blowout. It is irrelevant that costs have already been invested in this project. They are sunk costs and should be expensed. To help balance the books, council should sell non-core assets that are contributing to operating losses and to raise revenue. Why does council need to own Ocean Spa, or Mini Putt, or shares in the airport, or the aquarium, or Kennedy Park Motor Camp? Why hasn't land been made available on Marine Parade for small-scale commercial development that enhances the attraction of Napier as a tourist destination? Why don't we scale down the size of our council parks and sports grounds and make the land available for housing? There are innumerable non-core assets that council could consider selling or using to generate revenue. While council may have considered some of these options, perhaps a working group could make suggestions from ratepayers on the sale of non-core assets. The third part of my submission is the inflationary impact of rates. The proposed 23% rates increase this year will be followed by further increases in 25 and 26. These are all cumulative, i.e. the real impact of these rises is higher than the sum of the parts. There are real contradictions in promoting an average rate increase of 23%. I know a property where there is an increase of 45% proposed, and that is on top of a 100% increase over the last 4 years. If landlords are faced with these sorts of rates increases, their only option will be to raise rents. The Reserve Bank has already noted inflation as being unduly influenced by council rates. Inflation is a scourge on fixed and low-income families, of which we have a significant portion in Napier. Those ratepayers and families are going to feel the brunt of these rates increases. Inflation equals higher interest rates for longer and families having to survive with less or seeking more government assistance. Rate increases of this magnitude will drive demand for more social housing, and yet council is considering selling these assets. We should be building more of them and giving some dignity back to these citizens. In my opinion, there is no justification for rates increases of this magnitude. I ask you to take heed of how the commercial world would face this dilemma, aggressively review operating costs, cut additional staffing levels, sell non-core assets, find other ways to raise revenue. In other words, cut your cloth to suit. It is a real concern also we're only discussing the 3-year plan and the implications on rates. What will we be facing when 50 years of infrastructure neglect is to be funded by $500 million of borrowing? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Phil. Invite any questions from councillors. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you very much for that. Just to address one of your concerns, and that's the healthy homes. All but a few of our 377 units have been brought up to standard, and that will be completed by the end of June.
That is excellent, Maxine. Thank you. So why do we need to sell them then, if they're all healthy?
Well, that's a whole other issue that we will be discussing in the deliberations. It's part of the big picture.
Councillor Brown.
Through the Mayor, and thank you for your submission. And one of the things you spoke about was freeing up land on Marine Parade, and just wanted to check your thinking there. Were you thinking in a leasehold capacity or selling land to private developers?
Either.
Either. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? No. Thank you so much for your time, Phil.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I've got a procedural question.
Yes.
Are we able to discuss or deliberate on issues that submitters raised that were not in their submission?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, I would like to invite Sir Graham Avery from the Hawke's Bay Community Fitness Centre Trust to present to us. Welcome.
Kia ora. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to see you.
A change of pace from us. We're looking for money. Money that we believe we have earned, and funding that was offered a number of years ago. I also agree with John on the incredibly difficult job that all councils have in the country to do. Not easy at all. And I admire all of you who take on public office, and I'm sure it's been much more onerous than it normally would be after the cyclone. And my word, I don't know how you get through all the reading of these submissions that arrive. So thank you. We are a charitable trust set up in 2016 to make an impact on community health and well-being, and to give talented youth athletes the opportunity to be the best that they could be. To do that, we have a number of programs: health, fitness, well-being, healthy lifestyle habits, life skills, and with the advent of the Hawke's Bay Regional Aquatic Centre that we own and operate, a major campaign, Learn to Swim Water Safety. And overall, we estimate that 40% of our user visits are from Napier citizens. We have established, since we started today's values, 85 million in assets of regional benefit, and I won't go through all those numbers and the different programs. They do speak for themselves. we've placed major emphasis in our submission on the extra economic value that the programs delivered by the Trust provide Napier and the region as a whole. $4 million a year of payroll from staff and those based at the facility, new jobs flow into Napier, Hastings every year. Our schools programs, we assess $500,000 a year in social and economic value added. The Learn to Swim and water safety program on an annualised basis, $500,000. I believe that would be a $1 million in today's terms. That value was assessed on the value of one life saved from drowning way back in 1918. And very importantly, tourism spend, $4.5 million a year, and the two national aquatics championships held a few weeks ago. Nearly 2,500 visitors to the region, stayed 6 days on average, and using Tourism New Zealand's average daily spend of $155, to pip over $2 million in extra visitor spending came into Napier and Hastings. The benefits, 200,000 citizens, health and well-being, the education outside the classroom projects are treasured by the kids and well supported by the principals and teaching staff. Swim and water safety competency is growing all the time, and our talented athletes are growing year on year. I would like to point out to new councillors who might be aware, but the advent of the Hawke's Bay Regional Aquatic Centre would save council up to $50 million if it were to add a 50-metre pool when they look at an updated aquatic centre in 4 to 5 years' time. So the funding we are seeking is at 2 levels. The release of the second $1 million grant tranche of the original $2 million offered by council in the long-term plan 2018-2028. We need that to repay the borrowing because we only got the first $1 million in July 2021. An annual grant of $150,000 towards cost of developing and delivery of community programs to more Napier citizens. Should point out that the Trust receives no grants for programs or operations from any of the local authorities, nor from any government agencies such as Sport NZ. move over. We certainly recognise the budget challenges and pressures, and we've heard all about that this morning, and I'm sure more to come. However, with respect, we believe we've delivered what we said we would do and more than we've said we would do, and added significant extra economic value to Napier and the wider region that cannot be ignored. In terms of the annual plan, the refreshed annual plan, meeting the strategic objectives, we certainly have created places where people of Napier want to be, and our programs certainly have delivered enhanced wellbeing value to Napier citizens. Thank you, and thank you for your serious consideration, and thank you again for all you do.
Thank you very much for your submission, Sir Graham, and I don't think anyone would deny the fabulous work that you're doing with our community at the sports park. I would invite any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Sir Graham. I really appreciate the submission. As part of your request for funding this year, you have an OPEX request in there. I just wonder if you wouldn't mind touching on that. I think that's the first time we've seen an OPEX request.
Correct. And it's for programs, and we did not seek that from the outset. We took the view that we wanted to earn that consideration first, and we believe we have, and it's aimed at delivering to more schools, to more talented youth athletes in the Napier territorial region.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you both very much for your time coming to present. And next, I would like to invite Anna Pirard from the Prima Volta Charitable Trust. Welcome, Anna.
Kia ora. Whilst I'd love to be here singing, because that would make me feel a hell of a lot more comfortable, ironically, I'd just like to preface my presentation with an acknowledgement for the opportunity to be here for a start. It's not often that arts organisations get a look in these conversations, but I was so delighted to read through the long-term plan and recognise the undeniable alignment with our organisation's objectives. So I'm excited to share those insights with you. First off, I'd just like to, as well, acknowledge the decision to establish the new role for a leadership role for culture, heritage and arts at Napier City Council. That's really exciting. As the lead of an arts organisation that's focused on using the arts as a tool for social impact, for me this is a really significant development and very welcome. And I came across the Arts Policy 2014 this morning in my wanderings online, and recognised that this was part of probably quite a long process. So just really excited to see that come to fruition. I'd also like to acknowledge Council for the recategorisation of the Napier Municipal Theatre as a community asset. I think was interested to notice the gentleman who presented previously did not recommend that Council sell this asset because it wasn't commercially viable or able to be delivering a commercial measure impact for Napier citizens. I think that as councillors, taking a balanced view over what your community needs to benefit from is probably a very hard task. And I'm here to advocate for arts and the impact that they make on your ratepayers and their resilience, and advocate for our organisation as having a partnership role with Council to deliver the services that we do. So, although mine's a bit shaky this morning, I'd just like to point out that your voice has power, which is basically our drive. I'm just going to lean forward because I'm very focused on my physical alignment as an opera singer, and it's somewhat compromised. So I just would like to let you know that there's no mystery involved in singing opera. Festival Opera was founded in 2013 alongside Project Prima Volta in response to what was happening in this community. A spate of cluster suicides were a scourge for young people, and we recognised that actually there was a lot of evidence to suggest that young people were not happy in spaces and places. As a young person, my favourite space was the stage. My favourite place to discover what I could offer the world and what my value was actually the Century Theatre stage and the Napier Municipal Theatre stage. So I'm here to advocate for those stages to be thrown open and readily accessible to the community and young people so that they can experience the sorts of benefits that are there to be experienced. So I'm just going to get you to do something which is going to help me immensely, because it's going to bring me into my singing state versus, advocacy for our organisation to have an investment partnership with you. And I just want to help you understand what an opera singer does in order to optimise the voice. There's something, I'd just like you to take your index fingers, councillors, if you wouldn't mind, and I'd just like you to put them around here and drop your jaw and see if you can identify, you can do this at home, a cavity, a recessed area. Can you find that? Yeah. So when you really release the jaw, that cavity, you can find that. I need to see lobotomised look. Yeah. And so what opera singers have to do is they have to maintain this jaw release. And it's actually quite relaxing when you do it. It's quite relaxing. And we have to maintain that position whilst we sing. There are a whole lot of physiological benefits to singing. It is calming for the nervous system. It helps to connect you with people alongside when you're singing together. There are myriad ways in which it affects your confidence and your ability to sell whatever it is that you are trying to sell. And just generally communicate the message that young people are entitled to take up space and to be on the stage, like this young man here. This is Emmanuel Whanotifu Umano. He was an inaugural member of Project Prima Volta and is a finalist in the Lexa Song Quest, which is the premier opera competition of New Zealand, has won the International Eisteddfod in Australia. He is an amazing Hawke's Bay export. We deliver free programs to young people, 75 young people every week in Hawke's Bay. We deliver opera out of the Napier Municipal Theatre. We cannot do this in Hastings because Hastings did not expand their orchestral pit. So Hastings cannot fit more than 15 musicians in their orchestra pit in their opera house. So they actually cannot deliver classical opera in the opera house, which is a bit of an oversight. And I think that what we've realised is that visibility for young people is super important, and we would like to advocate for expanded programs that reach into your community, bring opera singers such as this young man who is making his international debut in Australia next year, as with Opera Australia, and work together with us in order to. I'm so sorry, that wasn't actually the first shot. I did have a few to work through, but I think that I actually think that this image says everything. Emmanuel came from very little and had to be supported all the way through school. And now he feeds his family through his voice. So in that respect, opera, his voice has enormous power for him and his community. So the ambition for our organisation is to receive a little acknowledgement and to work together instead of independently and from project to project. We have a lot of ambition because we see the benefits on a day-to-day through the face-to-face work that we do with young people. In September, I'll present at an international symposium in London. Let's hope I can keep myself together for that one instead of getting emotional. It's called the Social Impact Music Making Symposium, delivered out of my old university, Guildhall. And it's an invitation for people who run participatory opera programs to come and present their findings. And so we're 10 years old, and we've learnt a lot, and we understand that young people need a platform. And so we'd like to help design that and be more targeted in the way that we work with the community. Opera's not just entertainment. It can be quite relaxing if you understand what's going on. Yeah, and I think that it's good for kids to learn how to speak out and take the risk of communicating, even if something makes them feel emotional. And that's me out.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Anna. It's clear to see how passionate you are. I know how passionate you are about this. And in your submission, you talk about working in partnership. And
Yes.
I just wondered if you had any ideas about what that might look like, how you would see council working with you in a partnership model to deliver and achieve your aspirations.
Yes. Well, I think what we've understood is through observing young people working together from very different postcodes, different life experiences, is that when they collaborate, they learn more about each other and that builds trust. And so I think that this type of approach to get very diverse groups together, which is what reflects our community, instead of siloing, helps to address things like antisocial behaviour. In fact, one of the presenters at the SIM Symposium in September has led an opera project in Portugal at a prison there. And over 3 years, they delivered in year one, whakawhanaungatanga, working with the families, working with the prisoners, singing with them, and singing with their friends outside the prison. In year two, they put on an opera, Don Giovanni, which is about a crime that's committed at Mozart opera. But it wasn't just inmates who were participating in the opera, it was the psychologist, the director of the prison, and everybody became equals. It was a real equaliser. So this has been some really amazing research, active research done in the community that I'm looking forward to learning more about, and wondering how we can create something here in Hawke's Bay that helps address social issues, social impact, so that we can, continue to respond to community need. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Oh, yes, thank you very much, Anna. I do really respect the work you're doing. It's fantastic, mahi. I just wondered, in terms of connecting with council and working in partnership, we have a very strong youth council.
Yes.
And part of their role is advocacy. They're very interested in social issues. In fact, they beat our team in the recent debate with the council versus them, so that they're very strong advocates. And I wondered if you had thought about exploring that possibility of connecting with them in some way in terms of the kind of work you're doing with young people.
Yes, definitely would love to do that. I think our practice is to sort of consult routinely with our program participants, so we're always responding to what makes sense for them, what enhances their engagement. So it would be a natural extension. Yes, very definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you so much for your presentation and your submission. You talk a lot about partnering with council, the alignment of our vision and values between the organisations. What does that ideally look like?
I think for us, it's not dissimilar to my predecessor. It is about OPEX, and it's about, I would spend probably 60% of my week doing fundraising applications, which is why it's quite throwing for me not to be in my normal presenter mode. And I think it's about it's about the acknowledgement, first of all, that what we have done over the last 10 years is independently drive those community outcomes. And so partnering in that way, to free us to be able to develop the quality, the rich programs informed by, council gained insights, council data, your existing partnerships that have insights into how the rural sector, for example, is coping post-cyclone. We also made a decision, which was quite dramatic post-cyclone, to pay all of our contractors despite the cancellation of the opera, which is why I'm here and why 60% of my time is fundraising, is trying to recover from supporting the community in that way. So it is at a similar level. I have to fundraise just under $1 million this year to be able to impact people intensively, and there's a ripple effect as we deliver programs in schools and develop resources, and all of it we try to provide for free because we believe in that equity of access. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anna. We will release you from your... but thank you so much for your submission and taking the time to come and talk to us today.
So much for demonstrating coolness under pressure. Anyway, tough act to follow. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now, we are running ahead of schedule. I just wanted to check, are there any submitters here that would like to go early? Otherwise, we will be taking a break. Oh, yes. Absolutely. You're very welcome to come. And what was your name, sir?
Mark Brown Thomas, page 87.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Mayor Wise, councillors, people of all ages, ethnicities, colour, body shapes, physical and mental abilities, religious beliefs, sexual preferences or political persuasions. And I apologise if I've forgotten somebody.
You did pretty well there.
I'm going to America in a couple of months, so I'm just trying to get used to Joe Biden and, and all the wokeism and everything else in America. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Mark Brown Thomas. I'm now retired. I'm a fifth-generation New Zealander who's ideologically opposed to asset sales of any kind. So I think you know my position on council housing there. Pardon me. I don't know, with this myriad of these mini encyclopedias, whether councillors have had a chance to read and inwardly digest Sir Bill English's report on housing, which came out last week. No, okay, so very quickly, it's not just a report, it's actually a strategic plan with a blueprint moving forward. The strategic review recommendations came out on Monday last week, actually on time, and those 4 strategic recommendations have already been accepted by government. They're now working through the other recommendations, which encompass details on the way forward, and they have a pretty ambitious target date of 31 August this year. Essentially what those recommendations are for want of a better term, a change of direction for social investment in housing. And one of the things that they are looking at is not only upgrading the commercial housing providers, they're also talking about commercial housing authorities, so community housing authorities. The example they use is a company known as Tamaki Regeneration Company Limited, which I don't know very much about, and there isn't that much stuff on the website. But essentially, it's a different model to community housing providers in that central government and councils will merge social housing on some sort of proportional pro rata basis and then jointly create a community housing provider to look after them. Now, that's all the detail that I have. I hope that helps rather than hinders in terms of what you guys, have to do. And as I say, the timeline is very ambitious, but we are talking about something being public as at the 31st of August. That's all I've got.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. I'll just open up for any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Mark, and for going early. That's great. So just a quick question. In your submission, you've chosen the continue to loan fund the housing portfolio and retain ownership and understand your position on asset sales.
Yeah.
Is your position more that we should retain ownership or that we should maintain ownership and control?
Okay, so the easiest way to describe it is I personally believe that we should hold on to them. But the reality is that there are now mechanisms, whether it's a community housing provider or whether it's a community housing authority, there are now mechanisms. And the beauty, I think, of Sir Bill English's report, not only is the fact that, excuse the pun, that it's actually written in plain English as opposed to Wellington speak, it's very clear that they intend to move to that sort of social housing wraparound services, which are best described in the community housing providers for Christchurch, the Otutahi CHP.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very detailed website, and last Christmas when I was on holiday, I actually bumped into a recently retired person from that organisation who was only too happy to talk about, the advantages. The thing is, they've done it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and certainly people like Vicky Buck, with her you get the good, the bad, and the ugly all in the same. What's the name? They made mistakes, and they're only too willing to share. With that, what these community housing authorities do and the detail of that, I don't know, but I think as a first step, we probably need to separate out, social housing so that we can ring fence it, capture the costs, to then see, whether a CHP or a CHA, is the best way forward. But and how we do that, once again, I'm not quite sure, because there will have to be commercial terms and what's his names to do that. Sorry, that's a bit long-winded, but does that answer your question?
I think in the first couple of sentences you did, so thank you. You did
You
well.
should have cut me off.
Yeah.
We all like to, when we're nervous, we all waffle.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? No. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, as the Deputy Mayor said, for going early as well. It's appreciated. So I will just check one more time. Is there anyone else that's present that may like to do their submission early? No. So we'll adjourn now, and we're not due back till 2 o'clock. So staff and elected members, you've got a little bit of time back in your day. You want to duck away and get some emails done, or and lunch is 1 o'clock for staff and elected members downstairs again. So and then if everyone could be back here at 10 to 2 so that we're ready to go by 2 o'clock, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.